1922 family photo resurfaces. 100 years later, a grandchild zooms in and stops breathing. Maya Chin Washington had always believed that deceased people left behind more questions than answers. Standing in her cramped studio apartment on Chicago's South Side, surrounded by towers of dusty cardboard boxes, she was beginning to understand just how right she'd been. The call had come 3 weeks ago. Great-grandmother Essie had passed peacefully in her sleep at 97, leaving behind a house full of memories and a granddaughter who barely knew what to do with them. Maya's mother had been too overwhelmed with funeral arrangements to sort through decades of accumulated belongings, so the task fell to Maya, the family's designated history keeper, as her mother liked to say with a mixture of pride and exasperation. "At least put that graduate degree to good use," her mother had said, pressing the storage unit key into Maya's palm. "Essie always said you were the one who cared about the old stories." Now, 3 boxes deep into what felt like an archaeological dig through her family's past, Maya was starting to question whether caring about old stories was a blessing or a curse. The boxes contained the usual suspects: faded receipts from stores that no longer existed, church programs from decades past, costume jewelry that had probably never been expensive to begin with, and enough greeting cards to stock a small Hallmark store. But it was the photographs that kept drawing her attention. Great-grandmother Essie had been a collector of moments. Every box contained carefully preserved photo albums, loose snapshots, and formal portraits that chronicled nearly a century of family life. Maya found herself getting lost in the faces: relatives she never met, celebrations she never attended, versions of people she knew as elderly captured in their vibrant youth. She was reaching for her 3rd cup of coffee when her fingers brushed against something different. Unlike the other photographs, which had been somewhat carelessly tossed into shoe boxes and manila envelopes, this one was protected by a thin layer of tissue paper and stored in what looked like an old jewelry box. Maya carefully lifted the tissue paper, revealing a large, professional-looking photograph. The image was sepia-toned and remarkably well preserved, with the kind of clarity that suggested it had been taken by someone who knew what they were doing. At the bottom, in careful cursive handwriting, someone had written, "The Miller Reunion, Summer of '22. The photograph showed what appeared to be a large family gathering in front of an impressive 2-story farmhouse. Maya counted at least 15 people arranged across the front porch and yard, all dressed in their Sunday best. The men wore dark suits and suspenders, while the women were dressed in the drop-waist dresses and cloche hats that screamed 1920s fashion. Children of various ages were scattered throughout the group, some sitting on the porch steps, others standing beside their parents with the kind of stiff posture that suggested they'd been warned to stay still for the camera. Maya smiled, imagining the photographer's instructions. "Now hold very still, this will only take a moment." Photography in 1922 wasn't the quick click of a smartphone. It required patience, planning, and probably a fair amount of negotiation with restless children. She was about to set the photograph aside when something caught her eye. In the background, standing apart from the main group near the corner of the house, was a girl who looked to be about 12 or 13 years old. Unlike the others, who were all smiling or at least looking pleasant for the camera, this girl's expression was completely blank. Her face was pale, almost ethereal, and she seemed to be staring not at the camera but through it, as if she was looking at something far beyond the photographer's shoulder. But it wasn't just her expression that made Maya pause. It was her shoes. Every other person in the photograph was wearing period-appropriate footwear, the women in T-bar shoes or simple pumps, the men in leather Oxfords, the children in whatever passed for practical shoes in 1922. But the pale girl was wearing what looked suspiciously like modern sneakers. Not the elaborate athletic shoes of today, but something that definitely didn't belong in 1922. Maya held the photograph closer to the window, using the natural light to get a better look. The girl's dress was vintage enough, a simple dark frock that matched the era, but everything else about her seemed wrong. Her hair was styled differently than the other women and girls, less formal, more natural. And her posture was different too. While everyone else was clearly posing for the camera, she seemed to be just standing there, as if she'd wandered into the frame by accident. "Weird," Maya muttered, setting the photograph on her kitchen table. She made a mental note to ask her mother about the Miller family. The name didn't ring any bells, but then again, her great-grandmother had been connected to half the black families in the South through marriage, friendship, or church connections. It was entirely possible that the Millers were distant cousins or family friends whose story had been lost to time. Maya was about to return to the remaining boxes when something made her pick up the photograph again. This time, she focused on the pale girl's face, trying to figure out what exactly was bothering her about it. There was something familiar about the girl's features, something that nagged at the edge of her memory like a word on the tip of her tongue. The girl had a narrow face with high cheekbones and large, dark eyes. Her mouth was small and serious, turned neither up nor down but held in a perfectly neutral expression. And there, on her left cheek, was a small, asymmetrical birthmark, the kind of distinctive feature that would make someone immediately recognizable to anyone who knew them well. Maya's coffee cup hit the table with a clink that seemed too loud in the quiet apartment. She stared at the photograph, her heart beginning to beat faster as the impossible became undeniable. The pale girl in the 1922 photograph looked exactly like her sister Layla. Not similar. Not reminiscent. Exactly like her. Maya grabbed her phone and scrolled through her photos until she found a recent picture of Layla. Her sister was 28 now, but she'd always looked younger than her age, with the same narrow face, the same large eyes, the same serious expression she wore when she was thinking about something important. And the same asymmetrical birthmark on her left cheek. Maya held the phone next to the century-old photograph, comparing the two faces. The resemblance was so strong it made her stomach drop. If she hadn't known better, she would have sworn they were looking at the same person. But that was impossible. The photograph was clearly labeled 1922, and Layla had been born in 1997. Even if the dating was wrong, even if the photograph was actually from the 1940s or 1950s, it still wouldn't make sense. There was no way her sister could appear in a photograph that was decades older than she was. Maya set both the photograph and her phone on the table and stepped back, as if putting physical distance between herself and the impossible image would somehow make it less real. Her rational mind, the same mind that had gotten her through 4 years of undergraduate history and was now working on a graduate thesis about African American family structures in the early 20th century, was scrambling for logical explanations. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe the resemblance wasn't as strong as she thought. Maybe the quality of the old photograph was playing tricks on her eyes, making her see similarities that weren't really there. But even as she tried to convince herself, Maya knew she was grasping at straws. The resemblance was too strong, too specific. The birthmark alone was enough to rule out coincidence. It was in exactly the same place, with exactly the same irregular shape. She picked up her phone and dialed Layla's number before she could talk herself out of it. "Hey, Maya." Layla's voice was warm and slightly distracted. "What's up?" "I'm just finishing up at the gallery." Maya's sister was a freelance graphic designer who spent most of her time working on projects for local businesses and arts organizations. She'd always been the creative one in the family, while Maya had gravitated toward research and academics. "I'm going through great-grandmother Essie's things," Maya said, trying to keep her voice casual. "I found some interesting old photographs." "Oh, cool. Find anything good?" Maya stared at the photograph on her table. "Maybe. Actually, I found something kind of weird. There's this old family photo from 1922, and there's a girl in it who looks, well, she looks exactly like you." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "What do you mean, exactly like me?" "I mean exactly like you. Same face, same birthmark, same everything. It's honestly kind of creepy." Layla laughed, but it sounded forced. "Come on, Maya. You know what they say about everyone having a twin somewhere in the world. Plus, old photographs can be pretty misleading. The lighting, the quality." "Layla, I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at a photograph of you from 1922. Another pause, longer this time. "That's impossible." "I know it's impossible. That's why I'm calling you." Maya heard rustling sounds, as if Layla was gathering her things. I'm coming over. Don't do anything with that photograph until I get there, okay? What would I do with it? I don't know. Just don't. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead, leaving Maya alone with the photograph and a growing sense that she just opened a door she wasn't sure she wanted to walk through. She looked at the pale girl in the corner of the 1922 family reunion one more time, noting again how separate she seemed from the rest of the group, how her blank expression made her look like she was somewhere else entirely. Maya had always believed that photographs were windows into the past, frozen moments that allowed the present to glimpse what had been. But looking at this particular photograph, she was beginning to suspect that sometimes windows worked both ways. And sometimes, what looked back at you from the other side was something that shouldn't exist at all. Layla arrived in 18 minutes, not 20. Maya heard her sister's rapid footsteps on the stairs before the knock came, 3 sharp raps that sounded more urgent than Layla's usual gentle tap. "It's open," Maya called, not taking her eyes off the photograph that had been staring back at her for the past quarter hour. Layla burst through the door, her designer jacket still buttoned and her purse clutched tightly in her hands. Her usually perfectly styled hair was slightly disheveled, as if she'd been running her fingers through it during the drive over. "Where is it?" she demanded, her dark eyes scanning the apartment. Maya pointed to the kitchen table without a word. Layla dropped her purse and jacket on the couch and approached the photograph like it might bite her. When she got close enough to see it clearly, she stopped in her tracks. The color drained from her face so quickly that Maya thought her sister might faint. "Oh my God!" Layla whispered, sinking into the chair across from the photograph. "Oh my God, Maya!" That's you," Maya finished. "I know." Layla reached out with trembling fingers, then pulled her hand back as if the photograph was hot. "This is impossible. This is completely impossible. I know that too." Maya sat down beside her sister, studying Layla's profile as she stared at her impossible twin. "But there it is. The birthmark," Layla said, her voice barely audible. "It's in the exact same place. The exact same shape." Maya had been hoping that seeing the photograph in person would somehow diminish the resemblance, that the strange lighting in her apartment, or the stress of the day had made her imagination run wild. But sitting here with Layla, comparing the living face to the century-old image, the similarity was even more striking. "I need to see this better," Maya said, reaching for her laptop. "I'm going to scan it." "No," Layla said quickly, then caught herself. "I mean, what if scanning it damages it somehow? I'll be careful. I have a high-resolution scanner from my thesis research. It won't hurt the photograph." Maya carefully placed the photograph on her scanner bed, making sure not to bend or crease the delicate paper. As the machine hummed to life, she watched Layla from the corner of her eye. Her sister was gripping the edge of the table so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "Are you okay?" Maya asked. "I don't know," Layla admitted. It's really freaking me out." The scan completed with a soft beep. Maya opened the image on her computer and immediately began using the AI facial enhancement software she'd discovered for her thesis research. The program was designed to clarify and enhance historical photographs, bringing out details that were lost to time and poor image quality. As the enhancement processed, Maya pulled up a recent photo of Layla on her phone. "Look at this," she said, holding the phone next to the computer screen. The enhanced image was crystal clear now, every detail of the pale girl's face sharp and defined. The resemblance wasn't just strong, it was perfect. The same nose, the same mouth, the same slightly pointed chin. Even the way she held her head was identical to Layla's natural posture. "This is insane," Layla breathed, leaning closer to the screen. "It's like someone took a picture of me and photoshopped it onto a 1922 photograph. Except Photoshop didn't exist in 1922, Maya pointed out. "Neither did I." Maya zoomed in on the girl's face, using the software to enhance every detail. The birthmark was unmistakable, a small, irregular patch of darker skin on the left cheek, with the same jagged edges that Maya had seen on Layla's face every day for the past 20 years. Wait, Layla said suddenly, her voice taking on a strange tone. Maya, I need to tell you something. What? I've seen this photo before. Maya's fingers froze over the keyboard. What do you mean you've seen it before? In dreams, Layla said, her voice getting quieter. I've been having this dream since I was a kid. The same dream, over and over. I'm standing in front of an old house, and there are all these people around me, but I can't hear what they're saying. I can see their mouths moving, but it's like I'm underwater or something. And I always feel like I don't belong there, like I'm watching everything from the outside. Maya stared at her sister. You never told me about any dreams. I told Mom when I was little, but she said it was just my imagination. Kids have weird dreams, right? But Maya, this photograph, it's exactly like my dream. The house, the people, even the way I'm standing apart from everyone else. Maya looked back at the enhanced image on her screen. The pale girl did indeed look isolated from the rest of the group, as if she was there but not really there. There's something else, Layla continued, her voice barely above a whisper. In the dream, I always try to move closer to the other people, but I can't. It's like there's an invisible wall between us. And right before I wake up, I always hear this voice calling my name, but it's not my name. It's a different name. What name? I can never remember when I wake up. But Maya, looking at this photograph, I think I'm starting to remember. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. What do you remember? Before Layla could answer, something strange happened. The lights in the apartment flickered, and for just a moment, Maya could have sworn she saw something move in the photograph on her computer screen. When she looked again, everything was normal, but the feeling of unease remained. The name, Layla said slowly, as if the words were being pulled from some deep, hidden part of her memory. The voice in my dream, it calls me Adeline. Maya's blood ran cold. She quickly scrolled down to the bottom of the enhanced image, where the handwritten caption was now perfectly legible. The Miller Reunion, Summer of 22. Layla, Maya said carefully. Do you know anyone named Adeline Miller? No, Layla said, shaking her head. I've never heard that name before. Why? Maya pointed to the caption. Because that's whose family reunion this is. The Miller Reunion. Layla stared at the screen, her face growing paler by the second. Maya, I'm scared. So am I, Maya admitted. But we need to figure out what this means. We need to find out who this Adeline Miller was, and why you look exactly like her. What if we don't like what we find? Maya looked at her sister, seeing fear and confusion in her eyes, but also something else, a flicker of recognition, as if part of Layla already knew the truth she was afraid to discover. Then we'll deal with it, Maya said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. Together. But as she saved the enhanced photograph to her computer, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to uncover something that would change everything they thought they knew about their family, their history, and most importantly, about Layla herself. The next morning, Maya and Layla drove to Sunset Manor in silence. Their grandmother, Patricia Washington, had been in hospice care for 6 months, but her mind was still sharp most days. If anyone could shed light on the mysterious photograph, it would be her. Grandma Pat was sitting in her favorite chair by the window when they arrived, her silver hair neatly braided and her eyes alert. At 83, she still had the bearing of the high school principal she'd been for 30 years. Well, this is a nice surprise, she said, though her smile faltered slightly when she saw the manila envelope in Maya's hands. What brings you girls by so early? Maya exchanged a glance with Layla, who had been unusually quiet during the drive. We found something in Great-Grandmother Essie's things, Maya said carefully. We were hoping you might be able to help us understand it. Oh? Grandma Pat's voice took on a cautious tone. What kind of something? Maya pulled out the photograph and placed it on the small table beside her grandmother's chair. It's a family photo from 1922. The Miller Reunion. The change in her grandmother's expression was immediate and dramatic. Her face went rigid, and her hands gripped the arms of her chair so tightly that Maya could see her knuckles strain against her paper-thin skin. Where did you find this? Grandma Pat's voice was barely above a whisper. It was in one of Essie's boxes, Maya said. Grandma, do you know who the Miller family was? For a long moment, Grandma Pat didn't answer. She stared at the photograph with an expression Maya had never seen before, a mixture of fear, sadness, and something that looked almost like guilt. We don't talk about the girl in the corner, she finally said, her voice so quiet that Maya had to lean forward to hear her. What girl in the corner? Layla asked, though Maya suspected she already knew. Grandma Pat's finger trembled as she pointed to the pale girl standing apart from the group. That one. We don't talk about her. Maya felt her pulse quicken. Why not? Because... Grandma Pat paused, seeming to struggle with something. Because it's just a photographic trick. The lighting, the way the shadows fell. It has to be. Grandma, Maya said gently. The girl in the photograph looks exactly like Layla. I know what she looks like. Grandma Pat snapped, her voice suddenly sharp. Don't you think I have eyes? The outburst surprised both sisters. Grandma Pat had always been the calm, rational one in the family, the one who smoothed over conflicts and found logical explanations for everything. I'm sorry, she said after a moment, her voice returning to its usual gentle tone. I didn't mean to raise my voice. It's just, some things are better left buried. But Grandma, Layla said, speaking up for the first time since they'd arrived. I've been having dreams about this place. About these people. Since I was a child. Grandma Pat's eyes snapped to Layla's face, and Maya saw something that looked like recognition pass between them. What kind of dreams? Grandma Pat asked. Dreams where I'm standing in front of an old house, surrounded by people I don't know. And someone calls my name, but it's not my name. They call me Adeline. The photograph slipped from Grandma Pat's lap and fluttered to the floor. Maya quickly picked it up, noticing that her grandmother's hands were shaking. Grandma, are you okay? It always finds its way back. Grandma Pat murmured, staring out the window as if she could see something the girls couldn't. I told Essie to destroy it. I told her nothing good would come of keeping it. But she said it was history, said we needed to preserve our history. What always finds its way back? Maya pressed. But Grandma Pat seemed to be fading, the way she sometimes did when her mind started to wander. The past, she said vaguely. The things we try to forget. They always come back. Maya and Layla stayed for another hour, but their grandmother became increasingly distant, speaking in fragments about people they'd never heard of and events that made no sense. By the time they left, Maya felt more confused than ever. That night, Maya was woken by a sound she couldn't immediately identify. She lay in bed, listening to the familiar creaks and sighs of her old apartment building, trying to figure out what had disturbed her sleep. Then she heard it again, a soft, rhythmic sound coming from the living room. She grabbed her phone and used its flashlight to navigate through the dark apartment. Layla was standing in front of the kitchen table, still in her pajamas, her eyes closed. She was swaying slightly, as if moving to music only she could hear, and her lips were moving in what looked like a whispered conversation. Layla? Maya called softly. Her sister didn't respond. Maya moved closer and realized that Layla was sleepwalking, something she hadn't done since they were children. But it was what she was saying that made Maya's blood run cold. Layla was whispering what sounded like a nursery rhyme, but not in English. The words were unfamiliar, spoken in a dialect that Maya couldn't place. The melody was haunting, almost mournful, and it seemed to fill the apartment with an otherworldly atmosphere. Maya reached out to touch her sister's shoulder, but something stopped her. In the dim light from her phone, she could see that Layla was standing in the exact same position as the girl in the photograph, slightly apart, with the same blank expression, the same distant stare. Layla, Maya said again, more urgently this time. Her sister's eyes snapped open, and she looked around in confusion. Maya? What am I doing here? You were sleepwalking, Maya said. You were singing something. Layla looked down at the photograph on the table, then back at Maya. I don't remember walking out here. I don't remember anything after going to bed. What was that song you were singing? What song? Layla's voice was genuinely puzzled. I wasn't singing anything. Maya stared at her sister, seeing the confusion in her eyes and knowing that Layla truly didn't remember. But Maya remembered. She remembered the haunting melody, the foreign words, and most of all, the way Layla had looked exactly like the girl in the photograph. Lost, distant, and somehow not entirely there. We need to find out more about the Miller family, Maya said. And we need to do it soon. Layla nodded, but Maya could see the fear in her sister's eyes. Whatever was happening to Layla, it was getting stronger. And Maya had the sinking feeling that they were running out of time to figure out what it all meant before something irreversible happened. The photograph seemed to watch them from the table, its century-old subjects frozen in time, keeping their secrets locked away in sepia tones and faded memories. 2 days later, Maya and Layla found themselves standing in front of a weathered farmhouse 40 miles outside Chicago. The realtor had been surprised by their interest in the condemned property, but Maya had been persistent. After hours of research, she traced the Miller family to this exact address, and the resemblance to the house in the photograph was unmistakable. This is it, Maya said, comparing the current structure to the century-old image on her phone. This is where the photograph was taken. The house looked like it had been abandoned for decades. Paint peeled from its clapboard siding, and several windows were boarded up. The front porch, where the Miller family had gathered for their reunion, sagged dangerously on one side. Are you sure we should be here? Layla asked, eyeing the condemned sign posted on the front door. We're not going to hurt anything, Maya said, though she wasn't entirely sure they wouldn't be hurt by something themselves. We just need to look around. They'd come armed with flashlights, work gloves, and a crowbar Maya had borrowed from her neighbor. If there were answers to be found about the Miller family, this house seemed like the most logical place to start looking. The front door was locked, but the back door's frame had rotted enough that it opened with minimal pressure. Inside, the house was a maze of dust, cobwebs, and furniture covered in decades of neglect. The air smelled of mildew and something else, something sweet and cloying that made Maya's stomach turn. This place gives me the creeps, Layla said, staying close to Maya as they explored the first floor. Maya had to admit the house felt wrong somehow. It wasn't just the decay and abandonment. There was something else, an atmosphere that made her skin crawl. But she was determined to find something, anything, that might explain the photograph and Layla's connection to it. They were making their way toward the staircase when Maya noticed something odd about the floorboards beneath the stairs. While most of the house's wood flooring was uniform and well-fitted, there was one section that looked different, newer, as if it had been replaced or repaired. Layla, look at this, Maya said, kneeling down and running her hands along the suspicious floorboard. What is it? This board is loose. Maya worked her fingers under the edge, and sure enough, the board lifted easily. It's like someone cut it to make it removable. Underneath the loose floorboard was a small cavity that had been carved into the floor joists. Inside, wrapped in what looked like an old towel, was a small leather-bound book. Maya carefully lifted the bundle from its hiding place. The towel fell away, revealing a child's diary with a brass clasp and a cover that had once been a rich burgundy but had faded to a dull brown. Oh my God! Layla whispered as Maya opened the diary to the first page. In careful, childish handwriting, someone had written, Property of Adeline Miller, age 12, year of our Lord 1922. Maya's hands began to shake as she turned the pages. The diary was filled with daily entries written in the same careful script, chronicling the life of a 12-year-old girl in rural Illinois. Most of the entries were mundane, complaints about chores, excitement about church socials, observations about the weather. But as Maya read deeper, the entries began to take on a darker tone. June 15, 1922. Maya read aloud. Mama says the new girl is a cousin from far away, but I've never seen a cousin who doesn't eat at mealtimes or who disappears when Papa tries to talk to her. She just stands in the cornfield at night, looking at our house like she's waiting for something. Layla moved closer, reading over Maya's shoulder. Keep going, she whispered. June 20th, 1922. The girl with skin like mine came to the house again today. She doesn't speak, just watches. When I waved at her, she tilted her head like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. Mama got angry when I asked about her and told me to stop filling my head with nonsense. Maya flipped through several more pages, finding similar entries. Adeline had clearly been fascinated and disturbed by this mysterious girl who appeared around their property, but never seemed to interact with the family in any normal way. Here, Maya said, finding an entry that made her blood run cold. July 4th, 1922. We had the big family reunion today. Cousin James brought his new camera from the city, and we all gathered for a photograph. The strange girl was there too, standing apart from everyone else like always. When Cousin James developed the picture, he said it was the finest photograph he'd ever taken. But when I looked at it, all I could see was how the girl seemed to be looking right through all of us, like we were the ones who weren't really there. That's the photograph, Layla said, her voice barely audible. That's the reunion in our photograph. Maya continued reading, her heart sinking with each entry. July 10th, 1922. I tried to talk to the girl today. I followed her into the cornfield and called out to her, but when she turned around, I couldn't breathe. Her eyes were so sad, like she was lost and couldn't find her way home. I wanted to help her, but when I reached out to touch her hand, she felt cold as winter water. The entries became increasingly erratic after that, with Adeline describing strange dreams, voices calling her name in the night, and a growing sense that something was terribly wrong with the mysterious girl who had appeared in their lives. The final entry was dated July 28, 1922. I know now what the girl wants. She wants me to go with her, to trade places. She's been alone for so long, and she's tired of being lost. I can feel her sadness like it's my own. Maybe it would be better if I went with her. Maybe then she could rest, and I could find where I really belong. Maya looked up at Layla, who was staring at the diary with an expression of dawning horror. Maya, Layla said slowly, what if the girl in the photograph isn't me? What if I'm the girl who came to the miller's farm? What if I'm the one who's been lost all this time? Before Maya could respond, she heard a sound that made her blood freeze, footsteps on the floor above them, slow and deliberate, as if someone was walking through the abandoned house. We need to leave, Maya said, quickly closing the diary and shoving it into her bag. Now. But as they hurried toward the back door, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. And in the growing darkness of the old farmhouse, she could swear she heard the faint sound of a child crying somewhere in the walls around them. The Miller house was finally ready to give up its secrets. The question was whether Maya and Layla were ready to face the truth about what those secrets meant. The next morning, Maya sat across from Helen Rodriguez, the head archivist at the Cook County Historical Society, trying to keep her hands from shaking as she explained what she needed. Beside her, Layla had been silent since they'd left the Miller house, staring at nothing with the same distant expression as the girl in the photograph. I need to trace a family line, Maya said, sliding copies of the photograph and diary entries across Helen's desk. The Miller family from 1922, specifically a girl named Adeline Miller who would have been 12 years old. Helen examined the documents with professional interest. This is fascinating material. Where did you find these? Family inheritance, Maya said, which was technically true. I'm particularly interested in what happened to Adeline after 1922. Helen's fingers flew across her computer keyboard as she accessed various databases. Miller, here we are. The Miller family had a farm in Kane County. Let me see what I can find about the children. Maya watched the screen over Helen's shoulder, her heart pounding as names and dates scrolled past. Then Helen stopped, her expression growing puzzled. That's odd, Helen said. According to the death records, Adeline Miller died in late 1922. Age 12, just as you said. What was the cause of death? Maya asked, though she dreaded the answer. It's listed as unexplained circumstances. Helen frowned at the screen. The record mentions that she was found in the cornfield behind the family home, apparently having died in her sleep. But here's what's strange. There's a note in the margin that says the family reported she had been acting strangely for several weeks before her death, claiming she was talking to someone who wasn't there. Layla finally spoke, her voice hollow. What happened to her body? She was buried in the Miller family plot at Oak Hill Cemetery. Helen pulled up another record. But this is interesting. The family moved away just a few months after her death. They sold the farm and relocated to California. According to these records, they never returned to Illinois. Maya felt pieces of a horrible puzzle clicking into place. Helen, I need you to look up something else. I need to find any records related to my sister's birth or adoption. Helen looked surprised. What's your sister's full name and date of birth? Layla Washington, born December 15, 1997. Maya said, even as Layla stared at her with growing alarm. Maya, what are you doing? Layla whispered. I need to know, Maya said firmly. We both need to know. Helen's search took longer this time, and when she finally looked up from her computer, her expression was troubled. I'm not finding any birth certificate for a Layla Washington born on that date in Illinois. Let me check the adoption records. More typing, more waiting. Maya felt like she might throw up. This is very unusual, Helen said finally. I'm finding sealed records that were filed in 2003, but they're not standard adoption papers. They're listed as non-biological dependent status, which is typically used for children whose origins can't be properly documented. What does that mean? Layla asked, her voice barely above a whisper. It means that legally, you were added to your family's records without the usual birth or adoption documentation. This sometimes happens in cases where a child is found abandoned, or when family members take in a child under unusual circumstances. Maya's mouth went dry. Are there any details about how she came to be with our family? Helen scrolled through the limited information available. The record shows she was placed with the Washington family when she appeared to be approximately 6 years old, though her exact age couldn't be determined. There's a note here that says she was found, this is odd, she was found in a cornfield in Kane County with no memory of her previous life. The room went completely silent except for the hum of Helen's computer. Maya felt like the world was spinning around her. A cornfield in Kane County, Maya repeated. The same county where the Miller farm was located. Maya, Layla said, standing up abruptly. I need to get out of here. I need to think. But Maya grabbed her sister's arm. There's more. Helen, what year was she found? Helen checked the records again. 2003. She was found in 2003. Maya did quick math in her head. If Layla had appeared to be 6 years old in 2003, that would make her birth year approximately 1997, exactly what their parents had always told them. But that doesn't make sense, Maya said, more to herself than to anyone else. If you were found in 2003 as a 6-year-old with no memory, how do we have baby pictures of you? How do we have memories of you growing up with us? Layla's face had gone completely white. Maya, I don't remember anything from before I was about 7 years old. I always thought that was normal. Lots of people don't remember their early childhood clearly. But I remember you as a baby, Maya insisted. I remember Mom being pregnant with you. I remember bringing you home from the hospital. Helen cleared her throat gently. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's one more thing in these records that you should know. According to the psychiatric evaluation that was done when Layla was found, she kept insisting that her name wasn't Layla. She kept saying her name was Adeline, and that she was trying to get home. The blood rushed from Maya's head so quickly she thought she might faint. Beside her, Layla made a small, choked sound. She also kept talking about a girl who looked just like her. Helen continued, reading from the screen. She said the girl had taken her place, and that she needed to find her way back to her real family. Maya stared at her sister, at Layla, at Adeline, at whoever she really was, and saw the truth written in her terrified eyes. The girl in the photograph, Maya said slowly. She wasn't you. You were Adeline Miller. And somehow you traded places with whoever that girl was. Except the trade didn't work the way it was supposed to. Layla, Adeline, was crying now, tears streaming down her face as memories that had been buried for over 20 years began to surface. "I remember," she whispered. "Oh God, Maya, I remember. I remember the farm, and the cornfield, and the girl who looked like me. She said she was lost, and she wanted to go home. She said if we traded places, we could both have what we wanted. But instead," Maya said, understanding flooding through her, "you both got lost. She got stuck in 1922, and you got pulled forward to 2003, with no memory of who you really were. And somewhere, in the space between past and present, a 12-year-old girl had been waiting for over a century to finally find her way home." 3 days later, Maya and Layla stood at the edge of the cornfield behind the Miller farmhouse as the first light of dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Layla, Maya still struggled to think of her as Adeline, had insisted they return to where it all began. "I can feel her," Layla said quietly, her eyes fixed on the spot where the old farmhouse cast its shadow across the field. "She's been waiting here all this time." Maya clutched the 1922 photograph in her hands, along with Adeline's diary. Over the past few days, more memories had surfaced for Layla, fragments of her life as 12-year-old Adeline Miller, the desperate loneliness of the mysterious girl, and the moment when everything went wrong. "Tell me again what you remember about that day," Maya said. Layla closed her eyes, her face peaceful despite the enormity of what they were facing. "She came to me in the cornfield after the reunion photograph was taken. She said she'd been watching our family for weeks, trying to understand how to belong somewhere. She was so sad, Maya. She said she'd been lost for so long that she'd forgotten where she came from, forgotten everything except the feeling of not belonging anywhere. And she asked you to trade places? She said if we switched, we could both get what we wanted. She could have a family who loved her, and I could go where she came from. Except neither of us really understood what that meant." Layla opened her eyes, looking out across the field. "I thought I was helping her. I thought we were both going to be happy." Maya felt her heart break for both girls, the lonely spirit who had been displaced from time, and her sister who had sacrificed her own life to help a stranger. "But instead you both got trapped," Maya said. "She got stuck in the past, and you got pulled into the future with no memories and no way to find your way back. Until now." Layla turned to Maya with a sad smile. "Maya, I need you to know something. These 28 years with you and Mom and Dad, they've been real. The love I felt, the life we built together, all of it was real. Even if I wasn't originally part of your family, you became my family in the truest sense." Tears stung Maya's eyes. "You are part of our family. Biology doesn't change that. I know. But I also know that the girl in the photograph deserves to come home too. She's been alone for over a century because of a choice I made when I was 12. Maya understood what Layla was saying, but she couldn't accept it. "There has to be another way. Some way to help her without losing you." "Maybe there is," Layla said softly. "But first I need to talk to her." Layla walked into the cornfield, her footsteps quiet on the earth. Maya watched as her sister made her way to the exact spot where the 1922 photograph had been taken, the place where the Miller family had gathered for their reunion over a century ago. For a long moment, nothing happened. Layla stood alone in the field, the morning wind moving through the corn stalks around her. Then, gradually, Maya began to see something that made her breath catch in her throat. The air around Layla began to shimmer, like heat waves rising from summer pavement. And slowly, as if materializing from the morning mist itself, another figure began to appear beside her sister. It was the girl from the photograph, pale, sad, wearing the same dark dress she'd worn in 1922. But as Maya watched, she could see that the girl's expression was no longer blank. Instead, her face was filled with a desperate hope. Maya couldn't hear what they were saying to each other, but she could see them talking, two figures separated by over a century of time but finally able to communicate. The conversation seemed to go on forever, though Maya knew it was probably only minutes. Then something extraordinary happened. Instead of one girl disappearing and the other taking her place, both figures began to change. The shimmer in the air grew brighter, and Maya could see both girls becoming more solid, more real, more present. When the light faded, Layla was walking back toward Maya, and she wasn't alone. The girl from the photograph was with her, but she no longer looked lost or displaced. She looked like a normal 12-year-old girl, confused and frightened, but undeniably real. "Maya," Layla called out, her voice filled with joy and relief. "I want you to meet someone. This is Clara. She's been lost since 1922, but she's ready to come home now." Maya stared at the girl, Clara, who looked exactly like the photographs but somehow completely different. Where the photographic image had been ethereal and distant, this girl was unmistakably present, unmistakably alive. "How?" Maya asked. "We realized we were thinking about it all wrong," Layla explained, her arm around Clara's shoulders in a protective gesture. "We thought one of us had to be lost for the other to be found. But the truth is, we were both lost. And we could both be found together." Clara spoke for the first time, her voice soft but clear. "I remember now. I remember my real family, my real name, my real time. I was never supposed to be in 1922. I was from somewhere else. Somewhere much farther away than we thought. She doesn't belong in any specific time," Layla explained. "She's been displaced not just in time, but in reality itself. And now that she remembers who she is, she can find her way back to where she belongs." Maya watched as Clara began to fade again, but this time it was different. This time, she was fading with purpose, with direction. She was going home. "Thank you," Clara whispered to Layla. "Thank you for helping me remember." And then she was gone, not vanished but departed, like someone walking through a door into a place where she belonged. Layla turned to Maya, smiling. "I think I finally found where I came from. But I'm staying with you." Maya pulled her sister into a fierce hug, tears streaming down her face, not out of fear, but relief. "You're stuck with us," she said. "No matter what your name used to be, no matter where you came from. You're our family." As they walked back toward the car, Maya noticed that the oppressive atmosphere that had hung over the Miller farmhouse was gone. The house looked like what it was, an old, abandoned building with a history but no longer any secrets. That evening, they carefully stored the 1922 photograph in a safe, not out of fear, but out of respect. Some family stories didn't make sense in this world. And that was okay. What mattered was that Layla was home, Clara had found her way back to where she belonged, and the Washington family had gained something precious: the knowledge that love transcends biology, time, and even the boundaries of what's supposed to be possible. The photograph would always be a mystery, but it was their mystery now. And some mysteries were worth keeping.